Hi. So lately I've been feeling a little bit more critical for whatever reason. I've been feeling a little bit more, say, crankier towards the books I'm reading. I hope I'm not that crankier to other humans, but to the books I'm reading, I have in fact been feeling a bit pickier, more in general more critical, and as a result I DNF a couple of books, and I'm gonna talk about those books in this video. So I'm gonna start with this one first. This is Patchett's Bel Canto. I think I started reading this book a couple of months ago, and I've been really taking my time, and if I think I have mentioned reading this book in some of my past check-in Bookish avec moi videos, and I probably would have mentioned that I kind of enjoyed this book, and indeed I did enjoy this book in a way. It wasn't like that sort of this book did not feel like a stellar read, but I did enjoy, because I thought that the writer's sentence, her sentences are quite good. They are quite flowy. It's such a pleasure to read. It doesn't feel clunky, and I like the way that she kind of treats the characters in general, giving them some humanity. But I would say that that's where I would later found that that's the point that I kind of disliked about this book. But when I first started reading Bel Canto, it was really interesting. I really liked the premise of this book. So we have this main character who is a Japanese national. He owns a company, and his company is like really big. And one day he there's another fictional South American country that sort of wants to get their economy in order. They have some kind of hidden agenda behind their intentions, but generally they want this guy who owns this company to build his factory in their country, so to sort of create jobs and improve the company or whatnot. And this Japanese guy, his name is Katsumi Hosokawa. He is quite reluctant, and after a few attempts by that country to get him to agree that for them to host a birthday party for him, Hosokawa agrees with the condition that they invite his favorite singer, Roxanne Koss, who is an opera singer, to perform in that party. And so they end up having that party in that country, and the president of that country is supposed to attend this party. But then this president, he's kind of like one of those nearly stereotypical, corrupt, flaky president, and he does not attend this party because he wants to watch his favorite telenovela at home, which is quite interesting. One of the things that kind of grabbed me towards this book. But when during that evening, when they actually have the party, everyone is there, the birthday boy, the opera singer, and also other guests who are kind of like dignitaries and rich people from different other countries. They're all sort of gathered at that place, which kind of takes place at the vice president's house. And then suddenly there is this group of rebels with guns sort of crash the party and hold everybody hostage. And I think over the course of this book, they actually hold everyone hostage for like weeks and months, if I'm not mistaken. But I think I stopped after just weeks. I've not reached until that month, if I'm not mistaken. But I kind of read the synopsis of this book, so I kind of know what happened at the end. So yeah, I do know the ending of this book, but I did not actually read this book all the way until the end because I thought that there was few things in this book that just sort of bothered me a little bit. It just kind of diluted my enjoyment of this book. And I remember, I mentioned that, the way Anne Patchett injects humanity in her characters is quite lovely. I really like the way that she attempts to sort of gives us more stories into her characters. But then I think that's kind of like one of the reasons why this book just sort of loses its shine is because I feel that this book, for very strange, in this really strange manner, becomes, to me at least, extremely filled with optimism and hope and this sense of coziness, even though this story is supposed to involve a hostage situation and the kidnappers are like this really dangerous people who has guns, who can kill people. But somehow the narrator just sort of brings us to this kidnapping scene, this hostage scene with this positive lens in which we get to know different characters that are being held hostage, and we get to know their stories. We get to know that some of them are owners of big companies somewhere, but they have like some sort of internal struggles in terms of their wealth or whatever, and some of them have some kind of internal thoughts about their relationship with their family and whatever, and some other people, they have their own thoughts about their jobs and their own grievances or whatever. And we get to know these people, and we also get to see how these people sort of just form connections with one another in that house, because they're all being held hostage together and they're being held there for like weeks, and they form this relationship with one another, and they even form some kind of cordial relationship with the kidnappers as well, the rebel groups, which I think if you do it in a, I would say, moderate amount would probably be quite nice. But I think that this book is way too concentrated on that. It's just too much of that positive optimism, hopeful points that I felt that it took away from the story, and I found that it was so difficult to believe what I was reading. Even if I were to kind of suspend my own disbelief, I mean, I don't have to suspend my disbelief because this story is supposed to be like a realist novel, but then I feel like I have to do so because certain parts just feel too positive, and I felt that I just simply could not take more of that optimism in this book. It was just so strange, but somehow the hostage situation feels really, really cozy, and it's just so weird, so strange. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to stop reading this book. And another reason was that, and this one is not as strong as this whole over optimism point, but it is there as well, and it was just sort of something that I felt, I detected low-key. It wasn't really blatant, but it was kind of there when I was reading it. And that is how the setting is being portrayed, and by extension, the people who are associated with the setting. So this novel takes place in this fictional South American country. And this fictional South American country, it doesn't have a name, but we all know and we can all agree that it's based on Peru, because it even has a prime minister with a Japanese last name. And the hostage situation here is clearly based on the Japanese embassy hostage crisis that happened like sometime in the 90s. But the country is not named, and so we kind of have this sense that maybe this was not the intention of the author, but somehow it feels like it implies that this is a South American country, and these are the things that happen in a South American country. So sort of kind of like generalizing the image of what it is to be a South American country, and that is to be politically unstable, having rebel groups running around shooting people and kidnapping people, having politicians who are corrupt and incompetent. I mean, that kind of happens everywhere, but still it gives us this sort of skewed view on what it is, what a South American country is. And I feel that that feels a little bit unfair. I must say that I am not someone who is very familiar with the South American continent as a whole, and the different kinds of countries and the different uniqueness of those countries in that whole continent. And so from the point of view of someone who is not super familiar with this whole continent, and somehow feeling that this book just sort of gives me a false glimpse, I must say, that the country in that continent is such and such. I sense that there is a kind of generalization going on, and I don't feel that it's kind of fair. I don't think it's fair in terms of how the countries in that continent, or even countries in any continent, to be portrayed as such. So I do have a little bit of issue with that, and also by extension the people associated with it, especially the natives of that country, especially the rebel groups. I feel that they were kind of represented in ways that I would say is somewhat unfair as well. So remember when I said that the writer actually takes the time to explore the backstories of different guests that were being held hostage in that vice president's house. So we get to see a lot of like backstories and personal stories of those characters, but I noticed that we don't really see a lot of stories of the rebel group members, the kidnappers. They are there, and they are there in great numbers. I think there are 20 plus of rebel members there, but we don't really hear their stories. We don't really hear why they do so, and why they decide to join the rebel, and why they decide to act in this sort of violent way. And I feel that is, there is some kind of imbalance between the characters who are rich and privileged, and also characters who are just sort of disenfranchised and oppressed, and do not have that kind of privilege. So for me, the rebel characters, they sort of just turn into this monolith, and everyone, when I visualize the scenes in this book in my head, I just sort of imagine how these rebel characters, they just sort of look the same. They don't really look like very distinct and from one another. They don't really look like they have like unique stories. They all just look the same, and I feel that again, it's not really fair in terms of how the characters, all of the characters, are treated. And there is also element of noble savage being associated with these rebel characters as well. We just sort of know, or at least that's my understanding of it, is that these characters act that way because they're being oppressed by the government, and and just that. I would say it's not really nuanced. It's not really detailed, and again, back to the idea that these noble characters, these rebel characters, they are nice, but then they are desperate. But that's it, and you don't really see much more layers in these characters. So again, something that kind of bothered me a little bit, and it just felt like some kind of a red flag. I mean, it's not super serious, but I would say that it definitely affected the way I view the story, the way I view this novel, and based on different other elements that just did not jive well with my reading tastes. I thought that overall this novel just didn't work with me, which is kind of disappointing, because when I first started this novel, I enjoyed it. I thought that it was, at least a 4-star read. The sentences are lovely, pleasurable to read. But then, it just sort of became a little bit more unenjoyable later. So yeah, that's those are my thoughts for Bel Canto and Patchett. So now I'm going to move on to the second book that I DNF'd that week. And this is Tash O's The Harmony Silk Factory. This book also have a bit of a promising start as well. So, but one thing that I would kind of comment about this book before I proceed to my ranty phase is that, this book, I am not exactly sure what it is trying to tell me. I mean, if I did not read the synopsis of this book, and I actually looked up the synopsis, later, I actually did not know what this book wanted to tell me. Like, what was the point of this book? So, based on the synopsis at the back here, the non-spoilery synopsis, let me just kind of read this. This is the story of Johnny Lim, textile merchant, petty crook, and inventor of the amazing toddy machine, and his marriage to the beautiful Snow Song. In 1940, with the Japanese about to invade Malaysia, I don't think Malaysia exists back then, Johnny and Snow embark on their honeymoon to the mysterious Seven Maiden Islands, accompanied by a mercurial Japanese professor and Peter Wormwood, an Englishman adrift. Many years later, Wormwood looks back on this defining journey, while Snow's son goes in search of the truth of his mother and the infamous Chinese man she married. So, based on the synopsis, I think it's going to be about the backstory of Johnny Lim, and also the perspective of this Englishman, Wormwood, who kind of, possibly reminisces about this journey. Now, when I stopped reading this book, I actually did not get to the part in which the Englishman tells his story. So this book, it is divided into 3 sections. The first section is narrated by Johnny's son. The second section is actually from the point of view of Johnny's wife, Snow Song, and it's written in the form of journal entries written by Snow herself. Okay. And the third part, which I did not get into, was supposedly from the point of view of this Englishman. So, what I got from this book. I think that the point of this book is that it's trying to show us that, you know, you have a character, and depending on different kinds of people, and this is what I get from the reviews, depending on different kinds of people talking about this individual, in this case Johnny, this Johnny dude, depending on different perceptions, an individual can be seen differently. Like sometimes they can be seen as a bad person. Sometimes, you know, another friend maybe would express that this person is a good person, and another person would kind of say that, oh, this is a complicated person. So the way that an individual is viewed really just sort of depends on you know, the kinds of interaction that he has with the person describing him. So, you know, just kind of goes to share, you know, goes to tell us that perceptions can really be skewed, which I would say it's an interesting concept. But I did not get this while I was, you know, when I started reading this book, while I was reading the first and the second part of this book. I did not get that idea. Basically, I was just sort of occupied with trying to figure out what was the point of this book. Like, was there any event that it really wants to tell us? Was there any mystery about his son or his wife or whatever? But I think eventually I just sort of found out that, you know, the point of this book was just to show us that, you know, Johnny, this main character, but he's sort of silent in this book, he is a different person depending on which individual is narrating his story. So that's the point. And I didn't get that. And I did not get that. Anyway, to other details about this, you know, why this book just did not work for me. First of all, I just kind of want to start with that concept that I mentioned earlier about this premise of the story, about, you know, this whole thing about perceptions, skewed perceptions. I think that is a good premise for any story. But I think there is also a prerequisite for that, and that is the person in question, you know, the main character with which you want to dissect from different point of views. That person has to have a certain level of gravitas or charisma or some kind of greatness. There has to be this kind of aura of mystique surrounding him, you know, the kind of aura that would allow people to feel that this person is indeed mysterious, is possibly multi-layered, but somehow he is shown to be larger than life, someone who is not really that, you know, you wouldn't really immediately think of as personable, someone who feels distant from you, someone who feels really big. And, you know, that person just happens not to be Johnny Lim. Johnny Lim feels like a really normal guy, maybe just like me. And, you know, you wouldn't imagine a book about me to be in that kind of format, you know, where different people would kind of talk about me in ways that show different facets of my life. And I don't think that you would be interested in that kind of book, because why would you want to know about the different facets of my life in the first place if, you know, if I'm not an interesting person? So that's the vibe that I get from this book. I don't feel that Johnny Lim is an interesting person. I did not really care about who he is. I didn't even know what I was supposed to care about while reading this book. And so it just sort of fell flat. And yeah, all of that, the promise from that premise just sort of, it wasn't delivered to me, and I just didn't really enjoy the way that this book is being told, you know, the stories of Johnny Lim being told to me. So we learned that Johnny Lim is in fact someone who is kind of mysterious. He has probably done some dubious things in his past. He probably has killed someone. He probably has been, involved in some criminal activities. He probably has been involved in some kind of shady political organizations as well. But still, Johnny Lim does not feel really interesting. He's not interesting. So, yeah, that's the main thing. Because of that, I just don't care about what people want to say about him. So moving on to another point, why I find this book to be not really up to my taste. The second portion is written, like I said earlier, in the point of view of, from the point of view of Snow Song. So it's written in this form of journal entry. Snow's own journal entry. Now Snow has a somewhat, I would say, difficult or complicated relationship with her husband. But, that's as the best way I can, the best way I can describe her relationship with her husband. Because for the most part, I don't really get Snow. And I feel that her section, even though it's a diary written by Snow herself, it does not feel like it's written by a woman. It feels like it's written by someone who does not really know how to write as a woman. And it feels really strange because Snow's marriage to Johnny Lim is actually a marriage that is arranged by Snow's parents, because Johnny has sort of becomes a successful rich businessman, and they arranged Snow to be married to him. And Snow does not really have much say in that matter. She is sort of like this kind of quiet character, maybe a little bit submissive, sort of docile. But yeah, she does not have a lot of say in that matter. And when she becomes married to this man, she expresses some of her feelings in her diary. But then I got two conflicting emotions or feelings from this woman. The first one is very obvious because it's an arranged marriage, and so it sort of makes sense that Snow is not exactly that happy to be married with Johnny, because to her Johnny seems really cold and distant and aloof, and someone who does not know how to show his feelings, and so she feels kind of sort of trapped, sort of unhappy in that marriage. She does not really, she does not really have a passionate marriage. And so, yeah, she's not really happy. And at the same time, in other sections in her diary, she would somehow describe the attractive qualities of Johnny, whether it's in his behavior or in his physical attributes. She would sort of think that Johnny, in short, is sexy. And it is here that I feel that it's very confusing, because I don't think that, being complicated, or I would say being a woman, means that, okay, what am I blabbering? Because I don't think that, just because you are a woman, you become complicated. Again, I'm blabbering. But I just feel that, I think this sort of describes how I think about Snow. Even I am confused about what I want to say, but Snow really confuses me. Like, on the other hand, she thinks that her relationship and her marriage are unhappy. But on the other hand, she is, sometimes would be thirsting over Johnny. So it's really confusing. And, maybe this is the way that the author wants to say that, oh, maybe Snow is a complicated woman. But I feel that, being a complicated woman or a complicated person in general does not equate to being confusing to other people. Like, you still can express your thoughts, your emotions clearly. You still can express the complicatedness of your thoughts to other people and let them understand that, yeah, even though it's complicated, it's logical. Snow is not logical. And I feel that, is this the way that, the author wants to present women, as in wants to suggest that women are illogical? I don't know, it does not make a lot of sense. And so when I was reading the diary, and reading stories in the format of diaries and journals should feel intimate, it should feel personal, maybe even slightly voyeuristic, but at least you are given this glimpse into that person's inner world. And I feel that that journal was clearly written by another person, not Snow herself. It's like the journal is being forged by another person. So that's kind of like the vibe that I got from the second section of this book. Did not enjoy it. Found it really weird. And Snow is just a badly written female character. And I think that Snow is like the only important female character in this book, which is kind of a shame because, she is like the sole feminine or female voice in this book, but somehow her voice just sounds kind of distorted. Like, it's not even human, it doesn't even sound like a proper person. Like, who thinks about a guy that way? Like, I would imagine that if you're not really happy in that relationship, then, that's gonna be the dominating feeling that you have over the whole thing. Like, you won't suddenly find that you're thirsting over how sexy that person is. It's strange. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna end my rant on that note. And what I am really interested to know is if you have read any of these books, or maybe if you have read both of these books, I would be really interested to hear what your thoughts are on these books. Maybe you love these books, and your thoughts on why you love them. Maybe you dislike these books as well. Why you dislike them. I am so curious to know about all those. And I'm gonna end this video right now. I'll see you again in a different one. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this ranty video. And see you. Bye bye.